the things that many small firm accountants are trying to do is raise their prices for their existing clients. Now, whether this is because of long-term legacy clients that are low fee, low recovery that you signed when you started, or maybe your business plan has changed, your business model has changed, and you need to be able to price more in order to afford your overheads and get the income you need out of your firm. This is a really hot topic at the moment, so I thought I would delve into what's going on in our head that influences the pricing decision. Because after all, pricing is both a science and an art. So let's just look at, first of all, if somebody's going to buy from us, that means we need to know what influences their decision to buy. So we're going to look at, first and foremost, what influences their decision to buy. And then secondly, we're going to look at some of it at a neuroscientific level. How do actually then people take those decisions? And what are some of the ways our brain puts shortcuts in order to make that decision? So let's first look at how people take decisions. First and foremost, we don't take decisions rationally. And I know that sounds very, very strange, but we don't take decisions rationally. We actually start the decision-making process in our subconscious brain. Now, our subconscious brain takes input from our senses, it takes input from our limbic system, it takes input from our gut, and actually it has no power of logical thought. And actually it is basically influenced by our emotions. It runs things through our past experiences, what's happened to us before, and it takes a decision in our subconscious that is based upon emotion, not rational, logical thought. And they've done studies and they've watched poker players and they've seen that the subconscious mind is actually directing what the player's going to do before they're aware of it in their conscious mind. Fascinating. So what happens then is that when you start to become aware of that decision you're going to take in your conscious mind, your prefrontal cortex in exact, actually starts to put rational thought around it, logic around it, because we don't like to be thought of as emotional creatures. And so that's what happens. So what's the first thing that you need to understand about how people buy? They buy emotionally. So what does that mean when it comes to pricing? So unless you can really get someone at an emotional level, get them connected at an emotional level with what they need and what you're offering and how it's going to help them, then it's going to be hard to get the price you want. Now, the second thing is our brains are our most hungry, energy-hungry organ in our body. They take over 20% of the available oxygen, over 20% of the available glucose energy, basically, in the blood. So what our brains are always doing is trying to do things in an energy-efficient way, which means that it's always looking for shortcuts. And Daniel Kahneman, in his Nobel Prize-winning work on behavioural economics, probably describes it the best. He talks about System 1 and System 2 thinking. So System 1 thinking is the one that the brain wants to use. It's quick, it's automatic, and it uses the brain's shortcuts. It uses what we would call biases and heuristics. And you know you're doing a System 1 type thinking when I ask you, what's 2 plus 2? Instantly in your mind, I bet 4 popped up. Now, and you can do lots, your brain is on autopilot. And that's your preferred state for your brain. It doesn't want to think hard. Whereas System 2 is where you actually have to think hard. This is slow. This is very, very brain-hungry energy thinking mode. This is where you can only do one thing at a time when you're in System 2 thinking mode. So if I asked you to calculate 24 times 17, come on, you can't listen to me and do that. That's an example of System 2 thinking. Now, your brain, when it comes to thinking about, is this a good price, is this not a good price, is ultimately using a whole lot of biases to help it determine, is this a valuable price? So let's look at some of those biases that it uses. So the first thing is it uses mental accounting. So our brains tend to have this is what we budget for each period. Now, each period may be a week for them, it may be a month for them, it may be a quarter for them. We don't know, but they tend to have a mental, this is what we budget for each period. And if you go over that in your quote, you're going to come up against friction and you're going to push them out of a system 1 thinking into system 2. Now, when it comes from pricing and getting someone to quickly say yes, we ideally want them to use system 1 thinking. So what does that mean for how you quote your price? Well, it means that you want to quote typically by month rather than by year, because that's what people are thinking. They're thinking, I've budgeted £300 a month for my accounting, not £3,600. And that sounds much, much bigger. Now, the brain also has no power of being able to context a number on its own. If I said the number 27, it would mean nothing to you, but your brain is always trying to relate it to something. So it's always contrasting. So if I said the price is £400, your brain is instantly going to contrast it to either what it was expecting, it will contrast it to what it previously was. So how can you use the contrasting way when you're pricing? Well, particularly if you're doing a fee increase, how much does it equate to a coffee and a cake at Starbucks each week or each day? If you can kind of contrast it to that figure, maybe contrast it to, well, it's only an extra £5, £10 a month. It's only 3% more than what you're currently paying. That's going to seem a lot better than, instead of 200, 300, oh, it's £100 extra a month. How can you contrast that? £100 a month? That's just a meal out with your partner in life. It's not that much. If you can contrast it to something that they're used to budgeting, used to paying for, that seems a lot less, even better. The next thing is the bandwagon approach. So people are more likely to take an option if it's seen to be the most popular option, if others have taken it, if that's what their peer group has done. You may know that through the work of Cialdini. It's called social proof. So, tell people if it's your most popular option, if this is the one you recommend the most for people, if most of your clients are on this, if the person that referred them is on a similar type package. As well as this, I want to talk to you about anchoring and priming, and it comes back to what I've already touched upon, is that our brains have no capacity to identify what a number means in isolation, so it's always anchoring it or priming it to something that we've already done. And sometimes that can be a number in complete isolation. So they did an experiment and they asked people to draw balls out of a bag, and all those balls had a number on it. And some people drew out a low number and some people drew out a high number. They then asked them what they would pay for a bottle of champagne. And the ones that drew out the higher number said a number that was higher. The ones that drew a low number said a number that was lower. So what does this mean for you in terms of pricing? This means a couple of things. Number one, you need to start that conversation around price a lot earlier in the process. Because if you don't, your prospect is going to be taking other numbers. That's probably what they've paid for before, what maybe they've looked in their website research, what they've asked other people, and they're going to be comparing and contrasting your fee to that. So you need to get in their mind an approximation of the ballpark. As Bryony Thomas says, are they buying Primark or Prada? And that is going to happen on your website, which is why it's so important to put a from figure so people get an idea of what it is that they're likely to be paying. So I've gone into a lot of depth about how our brain works, about how we take decisions when we're buying. But a very simple level is you need to make sure that you've got people in system one thinking that's quick, that's automatic. And you can do that by making sure that you're priming them, by giving them an idea of what it might cost on your website. 2, by not shying away from that pricing conversation early. 3, by quoting the final figure in a monthly fee rather than an annual fee. 4, letting them know about if this is the most popular option, if this is what most of your clients pay. And those are the ways that you'll make it a lot easier for your clients to accept the price you're giving them.